This podcast contains explicit language.
Hey, this is Dave Hardass, and with me is One Nut Wuss, Carlos.
He says that because I only have one testicle. This is Two Fat Guys Talking, episode 3. Today's topic...
Yeah. Progression in MMOs.
Progression. Define progression. Context.
Progression of a world.
Progression of a world. So we're talking a narrative thing, or are we talking the mechanics of a world that progresses?
Both. We can talk both on this one because we've both played City of Heroes.
Yeah,
we both played World of Warcraft.
We both played Final Fantasy XI.
Yes.
We both played Star Wars: The Old Republic. I played Ion very briefly.
Guild Wars.
Yeah, Guild Wars as well.
But Guild Wars is less of an MMO, but...
We've also played games that kind of skirt the line, but are mainly multiplayer. Diablo, Phantasy Star Online.
Yeah.
Various games of that nature.
Exactly.
Coast of the New World, or whatever one that you had 3 characters in.
Yeah, well, that was an MMO.
That was an MMO.
Absolutely.
Facebook MMOs, I'm not sure
let's
done any.
Leave those out. I'd prefer not to admit to their existence.
All right. We'll shelter ourselves today.
Let's sort of go in progression of how old the MMO is, and then touch on what they've done good and what they've done bad.
Okay, EverQuest started the MMO. Warcraft took their formula and refined it. And that's kind of the de facto cookie-cutter formula for MMOs that tend to be financially successful. So we're talking about the trifecta: tank, healer, DPS, damage dealing, for those of you who don't know what DPS means, with a very specific kind of archetype going for the classes. And you see this in games, like in City of Heroes, the tanker, a protection warrior in World of Warcraft, a vanguard trooper spec'd into the protection tree in Old Republic. They're kind of the same class. They have similar mechanics. AoE threat. Warhammer Online had the same thing. Tank, spank, DPS, healer, even in a PvP-centric game. And that's kind of the MMO formula that's worked. Guild Wars 2 coming up is doing away with the healer role to try to force everyone to do every role in combat dynamically, which I like. I don't like the trifecta, even though I find MMOs today fun. I don't take them seriously as games. They are merely diversions.
Okay, I don't quite really get into that role because the trifecta doesn't bug me anywhere near as much as it does you. I will grant that at certain points in each MMO, certain classes have been at an all-time low, and therefore they thought they were gods. See, tank, Warcraft especially.
The problem there, I love to play tanks. I tend to gravitate toward them in MMOs, as you may well know, having played either of them for
Yeah.
That said, I have encountered good and bad tanks, healers, and DPSers, and I think arrogance is more a player than a role. I haven't encountered I haven't done a lot of data gathering.
It doesn't even have to come down to arrogance. It's more, especially with WoW. If you're a DPS and you start looking for group, you're waiting for a tank and a healer because DPSs are a dime a dozen.
But this is more towards the part probably why you wanted to do this topic today, and that's the necessity for that. And this is a problem in more than just MMOs. In Tales of Vesperia, there were 2 healers. There was Estelle and Raven. There was a point...
Really geeky, you remember those.
And there was a point in the game where, spoiler alert, Raven kidnapped Estelle. So I had no healers. I had to rely on my items. And since that game was designed around that, you don't replenish health on your own. The characters who have, other than those 2 healers who have health replenishment abilities, they're not that powerful. They're not that strong. So you're in a tricky situation where you really feel the flaw of this system. And as I was playing through the game, I thought this is very similar to MMOs, in that if you don't have a healer, you're in trouble. And it's really the healer part of the trifecta that makes the system what it is, why it's necessary, because your health pools are way too low compared to monsters. You need someone to be bringing them up. It's kind of what MMOs have boiled down to lately, and what I'm hoping Guild Wars 2 will break.
I don't necessarily agree. Let's take Old Republic. Old Republic, unless you're doing something heroic, or you're doing a quote-unquote instance, you don't need a healer.
Yeah, but that's the content. That's the ultimate, that's the game's end game. And that's what you'll need to do, and you'll need a healer for those.
Yes, but your helpers in that case, which is probably the best system that they've done in the MMO so far, will not get you through endgame instances. You need 3 or 4 players to survive endgame heroics.
And one of them has to be a healer spec.
Yes.
Unless they outgear the content.
Exactly.
Or a character class is broken, like early Death Knights in WoW, especially Blood Death Knights, who had a theme of self-healing, where they could keep themselves healed for the majority of an encounter. I remember in some of the Wrath of the Lich King heroics, my troll Death Knight in an account I no longer have because me and Blizzard got into a fist fight. Everyone had died on the boss. It was the one Viking guy who does the big slam ability that kills everyone in front of him. We didn't know how that worked yet, or we were all too slow, I forget. All my allies died, and I was face to face with this boss with 80% of his life left, and I won. Because nothing killed me. I healed back everything he did to me. Unless I made a mistake, I was not going to lose that fight.
As you said, that was a pretty broken class at the time.
Is it broken, or is it how every class should work? Should every class have the ability to take care of themselves? That's the Guild Wars 2 mantra. That's what I thought would help the Tales games. If everyone could take care of themselves, if everyone had some kind of way to heal themselves, you wouldn't need this reliance on the healer. And then the trifecta could evolve into something much more dynamic and interesting. That's the problem. The trifecta is boring. Like, you can design an encounter around it, but it is still God. That you can add a lot of movement to an encounter, but the trifecta is still going to rule out. You will need your healers in a raid. You need at least 1 healer in a group, maybe 2 or 5 in a raid, depending on composition.
Maybe this whole thing actually narrows down to the fact that yes, everybody should be able to take the healing role.
The problem there is then you're still only going to need a certain amount of healers to be optimum, and you'll still need them. If everyone could take care of themselves somehow, it becomes much more personal responsibility. And doesn't that emphasize the teamwork aspect a bit more? Doesn't that emphasize more skillful play?
Not in the least. Maybe skillful play, but not the teamwork, because the whole teamwork dynamic, that defines the tank, DPS, and healer role.
Yeah, you can have
teamwork. They're all intertwined.
You don't need that to have teamwork. Guild Wars 2 is trying it. That's a game we're both
trying
looking forward to.
But it's not out, so it doesn't counter it.
Yeah, but we can still...
It looks good on paper.
We
still don't know if it's actually going to work as far as the system.
That doesn't stop us from talking about a potential non-healer system where everyone can take care of themselves. If it's your personal responsibility to keep yourself healed, you still need teamwork. Keeping yourself alive and not dying is part of the teamwork. I remember when we did Zul'Gurub in Vanilla WoW, because it was a fairly, this wasn't a hardcore guild, so we had some trouble with the fights. But to help our healers out, we carried bandages if we were damage dealers. When the fight got hairy, we walked away from the AoEs, and we just bandaged ourselves. As I was doing that, I thought to myself, this is kind of how it should work. I kind of should be able to do this. It's nice when I can take my life bar into my hands, and now because they don't need this dedicated healer role, everyone has to take care of themselves. Who is tanking depends on the situation. It might be anyone. Maybe the rogue has to tank because the mob is focusing on him, and some other mobs have entered the arena that the other players have to DPS down. And then maybe that has to switch and the encounter becomes dynamic. Teamwork becomes way more important now that the roles themselves might change in a fight.
I definitely don't like what you're talking about, but that's just...
But you're looking forward to Guild Wars 2, and that's what they're talking about.
Again,
that's their whole ideal.
I'm not going to know if I'm going to like Guild Wars 2 until I play it.
I think getting rid of the trifecta is key to progressing the MMO combat system. I'll tell you right now, this is how I view MMOs. Fun diversion. Not worth taking seriously. That's how I view them. It's something like a really well-made fighting game, like HD Remix, or the upcoming Skullgirls, or any well-made fighting game, that I take seriously, because there's depth of mechanics, there's real strategy, there's real rewarding opportunity there. Like, it is very rewarding. Oh, you're laughing.
Oh, I'm laughing.
Part of the reason games are awesome is betterment. And this is something Serlin talks about, David Serlin in his book Play to Win. He talks about objective betterment, right? Even in a non-fighting game, in something like Castlevania, you learn the intricacies of how Simon works, of his jump versus whipping, which one's better in a certain situation, and you kind of learn how to get better at solving the situations the game puts you in. You get objectively better. There's an objective measure of progress. You gain a skill. You become better at this skill. And fighting games help you do that versus a human opponent. And the thing about MMOs is you're kind of more... It's kind of like if you had to fight Cutman, but you couldn't beat Cutman unless 9 to 24 other Mega Men were in the group with you and none of them fucked up. That's kind of how I look at MMOs.
And I think you're trivializing way too much. For example, you trying to say that fighters have a way higher level of either skill or dynamic.
Way higher.
I don't agree at all.
Way, like, leagues...
For example, are...
Towers higher than MMOs.
Yeah, no. Let's use our own experience with the recent Star Wars Old Republic. Yes, our solo play, I would totally agree with you. There is very little skill / dynamic there. But the boss battles that we have done with Byron,
mm-hmm.
as far as the instances,
mm-hmm.
You're saying there's no skill or no dynamic that we've had to...
No, here's what I'm saying. If I do everything right and you guys don't, I still lose. However,
how does that destroy team... How does that lower the teamwork / skill dynamic?
It doesn't, but it makes MMOs not worth taking seriously. Because I did everything right. I've learned my class. I've learned what I need to dodge, but I can still lose through someone else's mess up.
Yes, it's called teamwork. If the teamwork isn't there, you lose. That doesn't mean it doesn't include skill.
In Mega Man,
Mega Man's not a multiplayer game. It's not a valid comparison.
It's a valid comparison. In Mega Man, if I do everything right, if I learn patterns, if I learn the best way to approach Skullman's attack pattern, I will win. And I can get better and faster at beating him with just my Mega Buster. And I don't need everyone on my block to also beat their copy of Mega Man 4 Skullman for me to succeed. And that's an issue. That's why MMOs will never, ever, ever do it for me as a serious game. Because, yeah, it's fun to have that teamwork, but ultimately I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm kind of shackled to a whole bunch of other people. I'm a cog. I'm a cog in this game. And it's fun to be a cog sometimes, but it's never gonna really be the highlight of my gaming experience.
We're not gonna agree on this because you're taking it from a single player game having skill to a multiplayer game not having skill because you're relying on somebody else, and therefore if they don't succeed or something happens, it's not skillful because you can't solo it? What?
No, you're twisting what I'm saying. Lost my train of thought completely. Hang on.
Fighter,
right.
Solo.
Yes. So here's the thing. There is a certain level of fun I have having my life in someone else's hands in a video game. I don't mind that one bit. If I didn't find that fun, I would have sworn off MMOs long ago. There's a certain level of enjoyment I have to grinding, even though I will always decry grinding as a game design philosophy. It's a guilty pleasure that I have, kind of like how I like Power Rangers. This isn't the stuff of high drama or high art, but I enjoy it. So I enjoy grouping. I enjoy the grouping dynamic. I enjoy soloing in MMOs to try to get better at that. And I enjoy the dynamic of needing to rely on people as a fun side thing, not as a game worth taking seriously thing. There are games worth taking seriously and games that are just fun. And all I'm saying is MMOs are always going to be the fun half of things. Whereas in a fighter, this is back to my comparison, a well-designed fighter rewards you for not only learning the intricacies of the system, it rewards you not only for smart application of that, it also rewards you for knowing your opponent. And unlike a boss in a game, even the hardest raid boss that was ever made, there will always be room for growth. There will always be new things to learn. And as a game, a well-made fighting game is just leagues, it's just heads and shoulders, millions of heads and millions of shoulders better than an MMO. Is all I'm saying. We
are not going to agree on this one.
I will say this. The MMO PvP experience could replicate that somewhat if you didn't need to grind. Despite that, I really like Old Republic's PvP. Are you a big PvPer? You want to talk some MMO PvP?
Sure.
Okay.
very quickly, because
Sure.
we're getting a little bit off of where I was going with this. PvP sucks.
Fuck you.
PvP, okay, I'll take that back. It doesn't suck, but there are certain aspects of it that I despise.
Such as? Give me an example.
Well, I'll give you an example of a good MMO system, a bad one for PvP.
Go. Tell me.
Star Wars The Old Republic,
Uh-huh.
medium.
Really? I find it quite high, but sorry, go on.
Guild
Go on.
Wars,
Mm-hmm.
top tier.
Yes, because they actually.
WoW?
Why don't you explain why?
WoW PvP, bottom grade, dog shit.
Okay, enlighten me. Tell me
Okay.
of this. Start with Guild Wars.
Guild Wars, everybody basically has the same skill set that they can go off. Yes, there are certain things they have to earn and learn, but you're still working off of the same equal benefit system.
Needing to learn is never a drawback in game design.
Well, having to earn some of the
Having to earn, that's a problem.
little more powerful skill sets, that can be a little bit of a problem.
Yes,
But
I agree, but
At
needing to
least
learn,
everybody is working from the same set.
yes.
You're not, oh, well, this person did, and this is in comparison to WoW, oh, I did Arena for 9 months hardcore, and therefore I've got Sword X, which is 1,000,000 times better than PvEer who just wants to jump in at random, and therefore I can kill him in 3 hits to his 18 to.
Just like if Brazil had better equipment and rocket shoes because they win soccer more often.
And didn't, fall down.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And they had +2
By the way,
diving.
soccer sucks.
Soccer does suck. I love soccer.
But-
It blows.
There have been systems in between. I mean, the PvP system in Old Republic is growing. The actual battle system doesn't annoy me as much as, say, WoW.
It's definitely good that they bolster you and that taunts and stuff do something. You can tell, unlike WoW, that in the Old Republic, PvP was designed into the system instead of stapled on in WoW, which it really, really was.
I'm gonna say this right now, though. I like Warhammer's PvP still a notch above Old Republic.
I think this upcoming Warhammer free-to-play game is definitely a step in the right direction if you don't have to level or grind out stuff. Because Warhammer PvP did a lot of smart things, like how you collided with other people. So a tank could actually make himself an
Hold the
obstacle
person back.
and push.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. It's when you boil it down, a lot of MMO battle systems, PvP or PvE, are just turn-based systems, but kind of going on in real time. There's a lot of valid comparisons to the Final Fantasy time bar in a lot of MMO combat systems, because you don't have to accurately swing your weapon. It's all with dice rolls and menu selections. They're just happening a little faster than norm.
And actually, I have to take that back. While Warcraft is dog shit, there is a level below dog shit. Final Fantasy XI.
Oh man.
This is a game that was created with the Japanese grinder in mind. A person who wanted to do a second job.
Let's be fair here, because I'm sure there are a lot of Japanese people who played it and then went, this is dog shit, and then stopped. I think they designed it for grinders the world over who really honestly think that having a second job is skillful game design. Final Fantasy XI.
I mean, that game was designed that you could do the first little bit solo if you absolutely wanted to grind through it.
Unless you were a white mage, then you couldn't at all. Or a black mage, then you couldn't at all.
Black mage.
Or a red mage, then you could bullshit it.
But ultimately, it was a grinder's paradise, and if you didn't team, get the hell out of the game.
And that's a big issue.
I stuck around longer than you did. I made it past game my dual class citizenship.
I did that too.
I
was at level 40 when I quit.
I had multiple characters. I was doing the next major area.
Did you have multiple characters, or did you have multiple jobs level?
Multiple jobs level.
Yes.
I was not paying for a second class per month.
I agree, and while Final Fantasy XI is a terrible game, and it's even worse than ET on the Atari.
It was pretty at the time.
It was pretty. Terrible game. Atari ET's 2600 at least had gameplay in it, and even Superman 64 had gameplay in it. Final Fantasy XI is worse than both of those, but better than Sonic 06. Still, we're talking about the dregs of gaming. One thing I liked, your one character could level up in multiple disciplines. And you could do the subclass thing. I always thought World of Warcraft is not designed for this, but I sometimes imagine how interesting it would be if I could be like a warrior with a paladin sub, and how that would work in Warcraft. It's ultimately not needed, though. You don't need that. Old Republic is doing something like that with the upcoming Legacy update, where you level up certain classes, and then you unlock one of their abilities for their other classes.
Problem is, it's only at level 50.
So what? My trooper can use a force ability to represent his half brother's lineage in the force.
I still think they should do it mid game so you can actually toy around with it as you're leveling. Putting it in at level 50 for end game is sort of like, well, I get that ability, but it's only partially powered up as it would be at level 50. And it's really more of a trinket or a cosmetic thing than it is a properly powered sub ability. In this case, Mass Effect 2 at the very end of the game gave you the ability to learn on the next playthrough one of your abilities from one of your other teammates.
Mass Effect 1 had something similar where if you got certain achievements, they would make your character proficient with the weapon involved in that achievement. So
but having
you could make any character buff with handguns, no matter what.
But having that ability on your next playthrough the game was kind of cool. I wish they would do it like that.
I don't want it to involve a heavy grind, though. One thing I thought would be cool is if you could, in World of Warcraft's original idea where your character would get corrupted into a Death Knight instead of you just making a new one. I always thought maybe Blizzard designed this, that depending on the class you had corrupted, you would get some special ability for your Death Knight that represented that. Like maybe your mage corrupted into Death Knight would get some kind of Frostfire attack to represent that he was once a mage.
Yeah, Blizzard doesn't have the balls to do that.
You know what? I agree with their decision, because then you have to grind out a mage just to get this one ability on your Death Knight. And this is part of the reason I view these as fun diversions, because, again, you have to do this to have this fun. I'd rather just have it up front to start playing the real game. Like Pokemon. I'd like Pokemon a lot more if it was just a battle system and you got whatever Pokemon you wanted with whatever legal abilities they could have and maximum stats. And that's why a lot of people who play it use simulators that do that, instead of Nintendo's actual game, which forces hundreds of hours of grind to get to that point. Maybe because there's random luck involved. Hey man, you want to talk MMO? It's tangenting it off. Are we done with the MMO topic?
No, we're definitely not done with the MMO topic because we've completely gone off of where I was going. Progression.
I don't think so. MMOs have progressed in a certain way that is definitely comparable to other games.
Yes, but you're talking a different level type of progression. I'm talking world progression.
As in how the worlds change as you play, like Blizzard's phasing?
Well, Blizzard's phasing is definitely a step up. I mean, Vanilla WoW, none of that. Burning Crusade, none of that. But as we play through these games' universes, certain companies have done much better jobs of keeping us part of what's going on and having the world evolve versus other ones. WoW started that with the whole progressing different zones. That was a good thing.
But there's an inherent issue, though. When you do that a lot, like Old Republic does, essentially, and maybe this works because it does work in Old Republic. Old Republic, your class story is kind of like a single-player RPG story. And sometimes you can have group members along for the ride, but there's that, and then there's the group quests. It kind of feels like Saga Frontier-ish almost. You pick your main character, you go through their story, but then it has the extra option that you can do multiplayer stuff with others that have their own storylines.
Okay, right? Still not quite what I'm talking about.
What I'm saying is, that's kind of what happens, though. The character has to be the hero. They can't just be a cog. That was a lot of people's problems. It was really cool when you reported to Varian Rin what happened at the Wrathgate, or you reported to Thrall what happened at the Wrathgate, and you were at Thrall's side, because he recognized you, Lord Gizzard Puke, as the hero of the Alliance/Horde, and you were a trusted member of the Circle, and you were privy to these events.
Okay, but that is exactly what I'm talking about, the world evolving. You're still... Before you're still talking about solo play storyline, I'm not talking as in storyline here. I'm talking the world changing around you and how games have actually done this.
It's all part and parcel, though. You could either have it change on an individual level, where you see changes up to your your point and others see the world the way they are in their timeline, or you change the whole world and risk having people sometimes not involved in the events. One-time events that happen in these worlds.
Doesn't have to be one-time events, though. Blizzard promised us in the beginning that they were going to have lots of one-off events that would take place over a week, therefore giving lots of people a chance to actually participate. The Undead Invasions for Lich King.
Man, you just stretched out all those syllables.
Yeah.
Those are always fun to listen to in editing.
Just a bit.
You kind of sound like Galleon from Lunar. He stretches out every word. When I play World of Warcraft on the moon.
Are you done?
I like to feel important.
Yes, you do. Anyway, those sort of events were what was promised us from the very beginning. We got shafted. In fact, after they do the major patches, they should be holding events here, there, and everywhere. I know we're picking on Warcraft today pretty much, but their holiday events are not enough. Their holiday events are holiday events. There's really no content or things going on that are important for these events. If all of a sudden there was an event where we were hunting down dragons, cool event over a week.
Do you like the Warhammer Online idea? Where
I do.
On a server, you could actually take over the enemy city if your faction is doing well.
I think go for it.
And then their faction can do rebellion events from the shadows to try to take back their city.
I think that is a good way to do world PvP.
That's interesting. And here's why it doesn't work. Schedules. And here's why the Old Republic idea is actually pretty smart. You can have that epic feeling with these single player stories and still kind of bolt a multiplayer game on it, or design a multiplayer game and just have that single player component, which is what they do. And it makes you feel epic without them needing to lift a finger and actively craft these events.
True. I haven't talked about the one game that I think does the best for this.
Do it!
City of Heroes. City of Heroes has had every major content patch. Something in the world has changed permanently. Like when we first started that game, there was a Nazi wannabe, really hardcore group. 5 patches later, content patches, they ceased to exist. They were no longer there. They didn't just get transferred into a different group. They were gone. Zones were totally destroyed. And that was it. There was no, this is my outlook on the city. You log back in after a couple months and holy shit, this zone no longer exists.
There's some merit to that approach.
I know there are people who are constantly asking, like, companies like Blizzard, can we get a vanilla-only server? Because I thought the game was best back then. But in this way, you're not changing. You're changing entire zones. Quests are changing, yes. The world is progressing. You are being taken with it. And change is painful. There is none of this, well, I don't want this change to happen. You just got bitch slapped by a nuke. This zone is gone. Live with it. It's like Cataclysm to WoW. Except in this case, one day they just dropped it on you and said, hey, bitch, dragon incoming.
You have to understand, though, that... Pardon me, got something in my throat as I was about to talk there. I hope we'll cut this out in editing. I'm totally going to leave that part in. That was after the Brian tells fart line. In a single-player game... Yeah, let's make sure we're still recording, just in case we've been dead air here forever. Sweet! In a single-player game, if in Final Fantasy VI, I could restart or have a save in the World of Light and still experience it somehow. Most people, I found in my forum trolling adventures, who want a vanilla server, want it because they have no good grasp of how good game design works, and they actually liked how the old mechanics worked, because it rewarded grindy player who enjoyed content that only 1% of people got to see, who dedicated 20 plus hours a week to it. So in other words, the people who want it have no idea what the fuck makes up a good game. They want a terrible game because that was their thing. It's kind of like how a battered wife who doesn't want to get out of the situation because it's comfortable to her. These are the battered wives of WoW. However, some people really do want to be able to somehow experience how the zones used to be, like how you could restart a game of Final Fantasy VI and see the World of Light again and replay that. Maybe what MMOs have to do going forward is include a chaptering system wherein, you could be in the current world scene, the current world phase, or you could go back and replay chapters. Maybe it's instanced to a degree, but you can go back and experience old content again. This is similar to how Phantasy Star Online does it. Like, there's a progressing story in each of the dungeons, but you're not prevented from going back to the very first one if you want to do that again. Or games like Diablo do it one better. You finish the game, and now you can get to the next difficulty and play a harder, more experience-giving version of that old content.
That doesn't work for MMOs, though, because servers do have to be upgraded. Servers do have to move on. If they kept a version of vanilla WoW before, let's say, the Cataclysm, even, so you had vanilla, Burning Crusade, and you had Lich King, and that would require multiple servers per server. Just be there for people who wanted to do the old content. I understand wanting to do the old content, but I also understand the fact that worlds to keep players intrigued have to change. And by changing, again, I'll go back to City of Heroes because I think it's done the best this way. City of Heroes has done what Cataclysm did to WoW multiple times now. Players know, and there's always a lead up to it. But you don't have to wait, 2 years for a cataclysmic event to change the game around. It's like maybe every 6 months or so, you've gone through multiple content patches, things have changed. That zone that a month ago, they started dropping the storyline, the events, that things were about to change. That zone that was level 20 this week, it's now level 50 zone.
I'm willing to admit that perhaps I shouldn't go into an MMO expecting anything but that. Similarly, I shouldn't boot up Contra expecting Mega Man. I shouldn't boot up Chrono Trigger expecting Halo. Maybe when I go into an MMO, I should expect this kind of world, and I should expect this kind of progression that you want for the world, and I shouldn't pine after what's been lost.
I mean, we're not talking a cartridge you're putting in, and yeah, you're right. With Final Fantasy VI, you were able to replay the game and play it as it originally was. But it wasn't that 6 months later you were going to get an update that was going to add a bunch of stuff. We're talking...
A lot of single-player games do that, though. If FF6 was made today,
okay,
there would be DLC later down the line
that would change things up.
The post-Kefka world.
However,
Ultros has gained too much power.
But even there, that's the world growing. That's the world... I can't say changing at that point because it's not like it's going to really affect the original game. But it would be like downloading the next patch and importing a whole bunch of new monsters that changed up all the dungeons in, say, Final Fantasy X. You're used to all of these guys, all of a sudden you can't go to point A, you have to go to point B first because point A is going to kick your ass now. I like worlds that progress. If a game can capture my imagination, keep me playing, I get to grow with this world, and if you do it often enough, the players that have been there since day one live and grow and even can help change the world in certain directions if the developers, not so much Warhammer's way where you can capture other cities, but let's say you throw a whole bunch of objectives and you gave them 3 objectives, and all 3 could not be completed.
What you want the mechanics of the world to reflect the feeling of being an active participant in it.
Well, you always want the player to be an active participant, but what I would like to see happen is day one for the next month, Old Republic throws 3 objectives at their servers. And whichever objective is actually completed by the servers in the greatest detail, you can't do all 3. You can do all 3 half-assed, but you still have an overall winner of which objective was going on. That would then tell them how to develop the next patch. Let's say they introduced an outside threat to both sides.
I think I see what you're saying. Let's say the Yuzon Vong invaded early.
Yes.
Way earlier than they invaded later. Check out Wikipedia, StarWars.wiki.com if you need to know what that is. If they invaded early, and the way the majority of players handled the invasion would determine how they developed next.
Exactly.
So if they repelled the Yuzon Vong, it would go to some story where they're in hiding, but they're still a threat. If they didn't, they're now in a whole galactic rebellion where maybe they have to cooperate with the Empire, and the Empire has to cooperate with the Republic, and they have to push away a third enemy, but tensions still mount between them. I see what you're saying.
As far as PvP goes, and I'll reference Old Republic for this one, the PvP game is never going to be affected by these sort of events. Expecting PvP arenas and everything else to affect the world is stupid.
It would be nice to spectate. It would be nice if you could fly by this battleground going on. Like in World of Warcraft, if you could fly over Alterac Valley, and you could see one instance of it actually happening, but your character could not interact with it. You could just spectate. That'd be kind of interesting.
That would be kind of interesting.
That would put you a little bit more into it.
But World PvP can affect little things. Unless you're having a full World PvP a la, like, Warhammer.
Warhammer did that in its PvE as well. If you had to take over a zone to have a chance at certain dungeons, and if it was taken over while you were in the dungeon...
WoW did that with Cataclysm, with one of their areas.
They didn't do this. Enemies being able to invade your raid, invade your instance. And now they're at the entrance, and now you're racing against the clock because they're approaching from behind. So we touched a lot of aspects of MMO progression, from gameplay mechanics to the trifecta to a more story and narrative-based thing. Want to talk more about it?
I think we've covered a lot of points in that. I will say about one point that I kind of wish it happened in Final Fantasy XI back in the day. There was rumors, and I swear I zoned into a version of this, but there was rumors that they were going to start having where the Orc Horde, or whatever they were calling that one, would start attacking capital cities. The capital city was lost. Those members of that group would then have to take up Safe Harbor, one of the other ones, and everybody would have to work together to take back that capital city.
I think that what happened is they did something called Dynamis, where you could go into Dark World versions of each capital, and they were populated by enemy of that race. It's entirely possible if you glitched into one of these.
Yeah, but this was back before any of that was even... That was years later.
The framework could have been in the game, or you could just be crazy. It's one or the other.
I'll accept that.
So, fuck you. Beat you with a pipe. I'll cast Cryo Grenade on you, then use Warrior Charge, and then fly over you with my
If you're using Warrior Charge, I've got no problem. I've got at least an hour for you to get to me.
Well, let's make some fat Yo Mama jokes to cut this out. There was one great one on Shoryuken once about wave dashing. It's like, your mama's so fat, when she wave dash, the whole screen shakes, or it does damage or something.
But no, just back to MMOs.
Funny one.
I mean, we've done world progression, we've talked about battle systems. There's not too much else to talk about when it comes to MMOs.
Your mama's so fat, when she charges, she gets a...
Alright, so this didn't come through in editing, but the joke was, your mama's so fat, she gets a fatigue bar. Hopefully the laughter about to come up will reflect how funny it was. Back to the show.
Oh! That was an original one I just popped!
And it's so accurate, too. The only thing to talk about are the players. Some systems have players that tend towards not being dicks. Other ones encourage being dicks.
I remember in Final Fantasy XI, when I went to various forums, a lot of people would talk about how awesome the community in FF11 was. Haha, Freudian slip. They were dumb as shit. They honestly believed that because the game weeded out people who didn't want to put up with it, the players left at the end game were like creme de la creme gamers. That the best of the best playing the best possible game ever made. These were those people. And they believed they were a great inviting community because other people had the sanity not to go through that.
All MMOs have that, though.
You know what?
I mean, the most often said comment is,
this.
if you don't like it, leave.
I'm going to say this, both in the servers and in the forums, the City of Heroes community seemed very welcoming and inviting. They seemed like nice people.
They were.
They seemed like, cool guys. WoW was open to the masses, and we have two kinds of WoW dicks. There's the genuinely dumb people, and the people who think that everyone else is dumb, but they're just as dumb as they are. Which is
the ones
everyone
who try and take over in raids, who try and
Yeah, the people who go and complain, man, most of the people in WoW are dicks. Yeah, they're bigger dicks than the people they're complaining about.
And yet, I find that right now we have a major influx of those WoW players into Star Wars: The Old Republic.
It's so annoying.
And you totally see the mentality in the forums, and people pick it up. It's like, dude, you've got to be a WoW player.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Anytime I hear someone say that, I kind of want to punch them in the throat. When I was playing the beta for Old Republic, I saw a lot of people going, man, this is just so much better than shitty WoW. And I would try to explain calmly, this is the same fucking game. They'd be like, no, it's totally different. The lightning bolt ability in this game has a different cooldown. And I'd be like, are you serious? Is that your argument? That this game's exact copy of a WoW ability has a different cooldown? Don't get me wrong, I think Old Republic is the superior game. But it's a carbon copy of WoW with improvements. Let's not kid ourselves. It built upon a WoW template.
Okay.
Are we good?
One last
one. This is going to be the 7th or 8th one last. And we're going to do 2 more after this.
And that's fine. If it happens, it happens.
Ask away.
Mods.
Well, this has become less about MMO progression and more about just MMOs in general.
That's fine.
Mods, here's the thing. We talked about this when we were playing Old Republic last night. Old Republic doesn't have mods as of yet, or macros. As of this recording, maybe the next patch will be out before I put this one up next week. This week, because it'll be the present then, now. I don't mind that Old Republic doesn't have mods, because everything on the screen is exactly where I want it. I like the life bar under my character where I can see it. I don't like it on the upper left corner. In Warhammer, I didn't need mods because they let me modify the UI in real time, so I could move those elements where I want them. In Star Wars, they're all where I want. The only mod I would use if they introduced it at this time be something for the auction house, so I can, pull auctions, trends, and sell items with more efficiency. That's it. In WoW, I use mostly a UI mod, so I can have something resembling a usable UI and the same auction mod, but I still don't run a mod-heavy WoW setup. I really don't. I have a UI mod, an auction mod, maybe a mailbox mod, and that's about it at any given time. I don't really run more than that. Maybe a threat meter. And that should be built into the game. I honestly think a lot of those things that add-ons do should be part of the game already. I shouldn't need an add-on to make WoW's interface usable. I really shouldn't.
I agree with you. I do like how Blizz, in a very strange form of being open-minded on the topic, they're not usually that open-minded about things.
Ball sweat. I'll edit that up. Or will I? Ball sweat.
Mods inside WoW were used quite well. I mean, I played a healer and I used the healer UI. I do think that healer UIs do have to be improved in Old Republic. I think they are way too basic right now, and Byron will agree with me on this. He has said it multiple times.
Can I bring this back around to progression of MMO systems for a minute?
Sure.
Because this matters. In City of Heroes, I played a healer. Only MMO I ever played a healer in. I was a rad dark defender. I needed to target my allies 0 times. Because all of my healing was point-blank area of effect healing. Or something to do with damaging enemies that then radiated to all my allies. That was way better than healing in other MMOs. Even Warhammer, even though they let you have an offensive and defensive target, that was still convoluted. And I hate having to target allies to heal. I think healing would be a lot more attractive, even though I want it out of the trifecta. If I'm going to play a game with it in it, I would play a healer. I'd be way more inclined anyway if healers didn't have to target a thing. If they could heal via feel. And that's going to sound weird, but I should be able to look at my nameplates and heal by proximity and not have to target you. Because then that would make a dynamic healer possible. In fact, Blizzard said that one of their monk healer designs is an experimental no-target system. I'll be a monk healer if that's actually the case.
See, you're talking about more what my UIs allowed me to do.
But they cut that functionality out. You're talking heal bot.
They didn't cut anything out. It still works.
Heal, not the way it used to. It used to be one-click cure debuff, one-click heal, one-click cast the right heal for the right situation. Blizzard changed the entire API to make vanilla heal bot not work the way it did.
I've never had that heal bot ability. It was always depending on which button I press, which I had to set up manually. It would be, okay, if I hit left click, I'm casting this spell. If it's right click, I'm casting this spell.
That was after the changes they made to Vanilla Healbot.
I never used Vanilla Healbot then.
Vanilla Healbot let you do that because it automated the task, and Blizzard didn't want that.
Myself, I don't agree with that. You can't make every heal that you have an AoE.
You know what? It doesn't have to be a point-blank AoE, but what if it's a cone ability? Like my lightning gun in Old Republic? What if I had a healing lightning gun and I just aimed at a cone where I wanted to heal people?
But this goes back to the whole skill teamwork comment from earlier. That would require a hell of a lot of... You guys can't be outside this cone or else this isn't going to work.
It's just, so what? Like, I already hate the trifecta, but if we're going to have it, and, you know, there's already group healing abilities in WoW. You want to cast Healing Rain, you need to group people up. People need to get in position to be all healed. If they're outside the circle, they're not getting circled. The Circle of Healing. Priests have that.
Yes, but that's one ability among many.
And Byron, we're name dropping him 5 times. Gotta ask for his permission now. His Jedi Consular Sage has a Circle of Healing that we need to stand inside to get healed.
But so it's one ability.
Yes.
You can't have every ability be this.
But in City of Heroes, I could be a healer without needing to target, which means I could leave my target on enemies. The targeting system could be about enemies, and healing was something different. Healing is already something different. You can't ask a healer to actively participate in damage dealing if they need to juggle targeting people as well.
I argue that.
You do mouse over healing. Okay, that's not everyone's thing. That shouldn't need to be the skill they need to learn.
Because one thing they did in Cataclysm, which my druid healer totally got nerfed and became basically unplayable.
He was playable, you just blow.
Fuck yeah. Learn to play.
Yeah, learn to play jackass. Corner combos, just get out of them.
Shut up. Ultimately, it was just, they wanted my healer to add the actual damage. They gave you the ability to do that, and they pushed it before it, but then my mana regen didn't work, so I had to keep every last thing for that, and it didn't work. They may have fixed it by now, but I haven't been back to my healer in a long time.
I think
mods
we're running real high on time now.
Yeah, probably around 45 minutes, 50 minutes. That's fine, because we've done multiple topics within this area. But I think mods are a needed thing. Macros should already be in Old Republic.
I disagree. I think you don't need macros if you design abilities smarter. And I have this problem in WoW and in Old Republic. Too many abilities. So much ability bloat. More abilities doesn't mean deeper, better game. It doesn't.
I'll agree with you.
You can have a deep, meaningful game with fewer abilities. Does my Sith Warrior really need Assault and Battering Assault? Battering Assault is just a better version with a higher cooldown. Couldn't Assault just do that every 6 seconds instead of me needing to have 2 buttons mapped to it?
And this is why I think macros they need to bring it into Old Republic. Yes, it would be nice for them to go back to the drawing board, redo abilities, but we're talking now. Right now, for a number of my abilities as the Gunslinger, a macro would be a godsend, because it would free up
I think an even bigger godsend would be abilities designed around situational context. And that way you don't even need the macro.
Sure. Mine's easier.
Mine's better, because you don't need to learn a coding language. We have no trouble with that, because that was our college background.
Well, no.
So I have no problem. You know, when I need a macro in WoW, I open up the macro window, and I manually type it out. I study the macroing language.
Or you jump onto a macro wizard online.
I don't do that. I do my own. I learned all the commands, because I have that background.
But
that shouldn't be an entry requirement.
But
the ability should do that.
Throw that out there, because there are tutorials and there are people that have written pretty much any macro you'd ever need for WoW. It's not like they're saying, we're not talking a game, Final Fantasy XI, where you learned a scripting language so you didn't have to keep on typing everything you wanted to do. You learned how to write macros in that game.
WoW is already that way if you want to play with any semblance of efficiency. My warrior has a macro that charges, or puts him into battle stance if he needs to charge, or intercepts if he's in berserker stance, or puts him into berserker stance if he's in combat. And I wrote that from scratch, so all that could take up one button.
And that's awesome for you.
You know what would be better? If the ability did that by itself.
But now you're forcing.
I'm not forcing anything.
Sure you are. I don't want to go into battle stance.
Wrong. I'm making the ability optimum for what that should be. And maybe the problem is that charge shouldn't be locked to a stance. It's not going to be in the next
I don't think it is
expansion.
anymore.
It is. It is, except in Talons. In Mists of Pandaria, it will not be.
Okay, sure. You're more up to date on that than me, but for my druid, that wouldn't work.
This is similar to the whole gem problem I have in Street Fighter X Tekken.
We're not touching on that today.
We're going to touch on it because it matters. Because you plug in gems to make the game work a certain way, or you could just design a good game to begin with and not need that nonsense. I like that Old Republic doesn't have macros. The next step they need to do, make their abilities more intuitive so that macros aren't ever needed.
I still want the ability to do macros.
I realize that. That's because you're a homo. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Are we good for MMOs?
We're good.
Alright! Sign off!